A thread by J.B. White. Today I'm going to try and provide an extremely superficial overview of what I suspect is, and it is ongoing, although clearly in its denouement, Donald Trump's military campaign to save the American Republic, STAR. Flashback to late 2008, early 2009. Obama has been elected. I had been unable to share the excitement practically my entire social circle is experiencing. This was especially problematic for my wife. But I noticed an odd familiarity about Barack. Suffice it to say, I recognized him in the abstract from my days as an undergraduate at UF, University of Florida, plus from mixing and mingling here in Tallahassee with our local conscious crowd, which was a clear precursor to today's woke crowd. That crowd locally is heavily populated with social scientists, artists, lawyers, internationals, and government workers. I feared the worst in 2008 when it came to Barack and hoped for the best. My fears were realized. Apologizing tours before Inauguration Day, idiotically bowing to foreign leaders, stupidly inserting himself into local police issues of notoriety with doubtful racial angles. I saw a truck rolling down I-75 one day that properly expressed my sentiments. In big, big lettering, it screamed this message: one big ass mistake, America. At the time, all I could think to myself at that moment was, yep, yep. But it wasn't until Benghazi, I think, that I totally gave up on him. I'm not even going to detail any of that shiznit. The mere thought of it infuriates the hell out of me. I totally understand General Flynn and many more deciding right then and there Obama and Clinton must be stopped. They both must be stopped. In their attempt to implement that theology, communism, masquerading as an ideology, socialism, fueled by a useful idiot movement, progressivism, Obama, Clinton, and this effort, initiated first by Russia, but heralded now by China and aided by sympathizers, must be stopped. Enter Donald John Trump in 2015. I need not speculate on precisely how General Flynn decided to support Trump nor Jeff Sessions, or, for instance, Mike Pompeo. All I need to know is that several meetings happened. All were successful enough for an operating team to be organized, and the fact of these events occurring pleases me greatly right now. When it comes to our 45th president, there is a progression one should pay attention to when considering the Trump administration. It pays to think of said progression as a 21st century military operation, one fully prepared to meet a 21st century military threat. Again, this is Twitter. Serious matters are hopelessly superficial in this forum, but that's not always a bad thing. Many of our issues need to be presented in easily digestible ways merely to alert citizens on the likelihood of actions being undertaken on our behalf. And false narratives being employed by known liars the nation is definitely hip to by now. I think all of y'all know who and what I'm talking about. If you don't, cool. That's as good a sign as any that you're part of the problem I'm talking about. If you're Donald Trump and you see the outrage of Benghazi and the craziness of a rose garden ceremony giving honor to a freaking deserter, what do? First, perhaps you utilize your decades of experience interacting with local, state, and federal government officials to formulate a totally unique governing plan prior to deciding whether or not your nation needs you to run. After a broad range of civilian and military officials reach out to you via varied SOS messages, you decide to accept the challenge. What do you do after announcing your campaign for the presidency? Well, I think you lean heavily on your experience as a chief executive who observes and discovers information at every opportunity in order to survive in the cutthroat world that is urban American real estate enterprises. None more so than Manhattan. Yes, I know he relies on Sun Tzu, but given the incredible challenge he accepted and has thrust himself into with obvious gusto, he must also have his own personal mantra for centering himself. One likely approximating my personal centering concepts. It could be that faith is newly emphasized. 1. Patience. 2. Preparation. 3. Perseverance. 4. Attention to detail. 5. Flexibility. 6. Resiliency. 7. Never think that God's delays are God's denials. 8. Hold on. Hold fast. Hold out. 9. Patience is genius. After all, faith happens. To make the decision to move forward, my ego says he must have put all of these factors or something similar into play and thereafter moved forward by refining his macro level view of the federal government, civilian, and military. With his own private group of friends, private intelligence service, bodyguards, and international contacts, he must have called on Sessions and Flynn, and perhaps Pompeo, to do likewise with only their most trusted, patriotic friends. This intimate group must have formulated their battle plans to save the American Republic. First up, successfully defeating GOP challengers in the primaries. The forces of controlled opposition had favored candidates who knowingly or unknowingly were being utilized. The second sign of success was pulling off a successful Republican convention with internal adversaries at every turn, far more than we realized at the time. The third success, obviously, was winning the presidency. One day, the story will hopefully be told regarding off the charts confidence Democrats had of winning, stealing, the 2016 election. Total confidence. And the way they displayed it was absolutely bizarre to me. Well-entrenched Democrat friend was seriously shocked election night when I told her Trump would win 300 plus electors. She actually laughed when I told her this on the phone, not in a disrespectful way. She just couldn't believe it. But did she congratulate me afterwards? But she did congratulate me afterwards. The fourth sign of success was fending off a serious attempt by confident wrongdoers to have the Electoral College fail to meet their constitutional duty and refuse individually to support the man who won their state. Some forget it now, but I don't. They were very confident they could block Trump via the Electoral College. Here's the fifth sign of success and your first real indication that a serious military operation was about to be undertaken. With victory attained and Inauguration Day assured, what now? I'll tell you what. Trump essentially said it to us. Landing teams. Wowza. Yes. Announce to the nation your steely resolve to save the American Republic by naming your transition team thusly. Landing teams. Link in the thread. The nation knows what a landing team is. It's an invasion force by land, by sea, by air. From space, bitches. But Because these are preparatory actions, and you know full well the tremendous opposition to your administration from within your own political party and certain factions in the business community, you seed them with presumed friends, knowing some may be foes. Under the influence of Flynn, build your database of databases designed to discover networks at play on the battlefield that is DC politics. Observe how this in-house network maneuvers, ascertain who comes back with good information and who appears to be bullshitting. Put them to the test. Trump made a spectacle of going to work immediately and not waiting for Inauguration Day. We all remember his mittens dance, right? Quick aside for a wild speculative question. Is Mitt Romney a Judas goat? Has he been secretly working for the president behind the scenes by way of his public opposition to 45? Someone surely has been, and it may be more than a few. We shall soon see, I suppose. Anyway, the landing teams do their job and the transition is completed. The point of my thread is that it is on Inauguration Day when the military campaign I am imagining can officially begin. Donald Trump is now commander in chief. At the CIA, he has Mike Pompeo, West Point graduate. At the NSA, he has General Flynn. At DOJ, he has Jeff Sessions, who is an immigration hawk and as much of a private sector soldier as can be. He served as a captain in the United States Army Reserve in the 1970s. The Trump administration waged a world historic military campaign successfully. If you're so inclined, you can bet your bottom dollar on that. I don't bet my hard-earned income in such fashion, but if I did, I certainly would. Those three gentlemen I listed formed the nucleus. This is his base to effectuate the secret military campaign. His commanding general for the operation, however, is Mike Flynn. I believe Flynn is the tip of the spear, the brains who put this entire plan together. Apparently, the Defense Intelligence Agency was given secret orders, perhaps on day one of the administration, and two particular men appear to have been central to those orders. There are surely a multitude of others. But these two particular men have been publicly positioned this year in such a way as to communicate to the world their proven effectiveness and loyalty to the nation. There is a very interesting symmetry that becomes apparent when taking a look at these two men. One is Ezra Cohen Watnick, who caused a sensation of concern on the left wing when he was placed by General Flynn within the NSA. This forced the left-wingers in certain positions to tell on themselves, unmask themselves in their visceral Flynn-like opposition to him. In a July 23, 2017 piece, Rosie Gray spoke for a nation of left-wingers perplexed by Ezra Cohen Watnick. Link in the thread from The Atlantic. The man McMaster couldn't fire. They tried desperately to fire the man. Trump would not let them. His initial work discovering the networks was not done until August 2nd, 2017. In August 2017, with so much oppositional craziness going on, Ezra went into the Defense Intelligence Agency's shadows, I suspect, likely working specifically with the Defense Clandestine Service. Since then, just take a look at the incredible public profile of this guy. April 2018, he comes back out of the shadows and publicly rejoins the Trump administration in the Department of Justice, advising Attorney General Sessions on counterterrorism and counterintelligence. Later, at America's National Security Council, Ezra served as the special assistant to the president and senior director for intelligence programs. He was primarily responsible for the implementation of the President's National Security Council objectives through the use of intelligence community capabilities. May 2020. Ezra Cohen Watnick was appointed as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Counter-Narcotics and Global Threats. By September 2020, he had been promoted to Acting ASD, Assistant Special Director for Special Operations and Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations and Low Intensity Conflict. He was responsible for all policy formulation and oversight for DoD counterterrorism, special operations, counter-narcotics, and a range of stability operations. On November 10th, 2020, 45 relieved a number of senior defense officials, including Secretary of Defense Mark Esper and Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence Joseph Kernan, who resigned in anticipation of being fired. 45 chose Ezra to be the acting Undersecretary of Defense. Most recently, Ezra was appointed by President Trump to chair the Public Interest Declassification Board. A methodical series of moves have been made on the chessboard when it comes to this man. That should, and does, speak volumes. The next guy exists more in the shadows, less public scrutiny. However, when America needs her most dangerous missions completed by the quietest of her quiet professionals, when she needs her most elite fighting force on the planet, bar none, she calls on Delta Force. That man is Christopher Miller, and he was clearly a member of Delta Force. Throughout his career, Miller appears to have served with Special Operations Units, lastly with command of 2nd Battalion, 5th Special Forces Group, 1 battalion of the famed Green Berets. United States Army Green Beret A-teams are the primary feeders into Delta Force, which is essentially the most elite mission-appropriate collection of Green Berets. Any member of our military can be a member of Delta Force, but the Green Berets are their backbone. For informational purposes, we know Miller was with other Special Forces troops in Afghanistan on horseback, effectively and efficiently, doing battle with the Taliban. From military.com, new acting SecDef is a former horse soldier who played key role in Afghanistan. Link in the thread. 12 Strong, the movie, is about our Special Forces troops at work in the early actions in Afghanistan. I've not seen it, but I'll have to give it a look-see. RogerEbert.com, 12 Strong movie review and film summary, 2018. Link in the thread. Fast forward to Miller's retirement from the Army in 2014. Thereafter, he worked for over 2 years as a defense contractor, providing clandestine special operations and intelligence expertise directly to the Undersecretaries of Defense for Intelligence and Policy. Flynn was forced into retirement from the Army by Obama in 2014. Prior to that, he very likely came into contact with Miller during their Iraq and Afghanistan tours. My favorite general was prescient in a 2010 critique of the intelligence community and earned enemies, no doubt. Flynn and his co-writers, in a widely shared 2010 analytical report, maintained, quote, "The intelligence community is a culture that is strangely oblivious to how little its analytical products, as they now exist, actually influence commanders," end quote. Link in the thread to the Wall Street Journal. Quote, "It is also a culture that is emphatic about secrecy, but regrettably less concerned about mission effectiveness," end quote. Given what we've learned, what we've seen over the last 4 years, I read those two sentences differently now than I did in 2010. I see much more clearly. I see much more clearly now the odd effectiveness of CCP influence among Americans who should know better, but apparently don't. Punk bitches at the local, state, and federal levels who have sold the nation out for coin. I may have overlooked some shiznit, but between 2014 until 2017, 2018 is something of a blur with respect to Miller, but he appears to have been in the defense contractor shadows. Could be. He has worked for the Defense Clandestine Service from 2014 until March of 2018. From March 2018 through December 2019, Miller served as the Special Assistant to the President and Senior Director for Counterterrorism and Transnational Threats at the National Security Council. Remember, the National Security Council is the most important group of advisors to President Trump on matters of foreign and domestic national security. Our Vice President and President of the Senate, Mike Pence, also sits on the National Security Council. Are you beginning to see the very important connections? In what was obviously going to be a very eventful year, Miller was sworn in as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations and Combating Terrorism on January 6th, 2020. He was then quickly named the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations Low Intensity Conflict. From August 10th, 2020 through November 9th, 2020, he served as the director of our National Counterterrorism Center. Connections, connections, connections. National interactions, etc. And finally, in a truly monumental move, earth-shattering, in fact, he was named Acting Secretary of Defense on November 9th. Then, in an equally earth-shattering move, he made special operations essentially equal with the other branches of service. I'm telling you, these two men, Ezra Cohen and Christopher Miller, are going to go down in history and will be celebrated coast to coast for centuries. These globalists, these communistic bastards, had a damn good game plan. Luckily, their punk-ass plans weren't quite good enough. Tomorrow, I'll tell you what I think these two, along with General Flynn and Mike Pompeo and the much maligned Jeff Sessions, collectively shepherded through under the leadership of President Donald Trump and that of the President of the United States Senate, Mike Pence. However, the fact that Christopher Miller and Ezra Cohen have been named to incredibly important Defense Department positions after Election Day means one thing and one thing only. They, along with a loyal band of Americans, have indeed saved the Republic. Hooah! I'll be in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. To support that effort, please donate. Links in the description.
I will be the greatest president that God ever created.